George Papadopoulos? George Papadopoulos, you might remember, he was a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign in 2016. And it was his meetings with Russian government intermediaries who were offering dirt on Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign that started the whole investigation into Russia interfering in that election to try to hurt Clinton and help Trump. The whole thing went back to George Papadopoulos talking to intermediaries for the Russian government. The U.S. intelligence and law enforcement were curious, why would Russia be offering information about Hillary Clinton to somebody associated with the Trump campaign? Let's look into it. That's how the whole thing started. George Papadopoulos pled guilty to lying to the FBI about his Russian contacts. He went to prison after he got out of the Crowbar Hotel. He and his wife, you also might remember, they had a weird Hollywood interlude where they were maybe going to star in a reality TV show that involved towels. I don't know. That seemed to have not panned out. Reportedly, though, they now have found a new gig. Now, in time for the 2024 presidential election. Guess what their new gig is? Running a Russian propaganda website. Who could have predicted? From the Guardian newspaper, quote, working alongside contributors for Kremlin state media, the former Donald Trump policy aide George Papadopoulos, his wife Simona, and others have become editorial board members of a pro-Russian website that spreads debunked conspiracy theories about the war in Ukraine and election fraud and vaccines. The outlet's articles have been shared on social media by the conspiracist Alex Jones, by former Trump aide Roger Stone. Nearly half of the outlet's board members are either former aide surrogates or fake electors for Trump's previous two presidential campaigns. Other board members include a former journalist for Russian state-owned news agency Sputnik, also an advisor to the guy who Putin appointed to rule over part of the territory Russia invaded and stole from Ukraine, a man who has since been sanctioned by the U.S. government for that.
And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Russiagate. This is the story on Mifsud, Mossad, and the manufactured coup. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and welcome to Steel News. We're still in the war zone. Today, we're going to talk about a tale of shadows and statecraft, of smokescreen narratives and vanishing men, and at the heart, one Joseph Mifsud, the Maltese professor who ignited the Russiagate conflagration and unsettling truth of his absence. All in the John Durham findings. What was that about? Well, we now know that as of December of 2016, before the intelligence community assessment was finalized, President Obama publicly nodded to the CIA's claim that Russia favored Donald Trump. Don't we all know this? I mean, it's the Russia fake story. Our guest today was smack dab in the middle of it, anchoring the false narrative, of course, in the public mind. Obama made sure that the facts were even locked down so that everybody believed somehow Russia backed Trump to win. So let me ask, was this guy Joseph Mifsud, the gentleman who's sort of in the middle of this, that kind of kicked off this entire story, trying to use George Papadopoulos, basically throwing him under the bus in a major way? Was Mifsud actually a covert ally of Western intelligence? Was he deployed to engineer a political crisis? And if so, whose interest did he serve? The Republic or the federal corporation? Today, we follow the trail. We have to ask some questions. Where are John Brennan, Clapper, and Comey? What does George Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud know about what was going on? What does General Flynn know about all this? And of course, you can't say George Papadopoulos without talking about his beautiful wife, Simona. So we're going to talk to her too, because of course, this is a very critical juncture right now. We are coming down to the wire. Tulsi Gabbard is delivering red meat, not only to the American people with truth, but she's delivering it up on a silver platter for Pam Bondi. And right now we know Pam has assembled a secret grand jury in Florida. And I'm wondering, are we going to get to the truth on elections? Are we going to get to the truth on Russiagate? Where are all these people? But more critically, where is the guy who kind of kicked this all off and drug George Papadopoulos' name through the mud and into prison? Where is he now? We're going to talk about many of these narratives and Mifsud's role. And I'm going to bring in now our special guest of the day, George Papadopoulos, and his beautiful wife, Simona. Folks, it is so good to see you. Last time I saw you was at the Naples Collier County Lincoln dinner. Briefly, Simona, you and I ran into each other in the bathroom. George, I could see you from across the room, didn't get a chance to say hi.
And it's great to see you on the show. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks a lot for having us. And obviously, Florida's where all the action is right now. A lot of Patriots down there. It was a wonderful event, and I'm sure we're going to run into each other in some more events down in Florida. So thanks again for having us.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot going on. You guys are over in Italy. Lucky you. And it's unbearably hot, apparently. Well, it's unbearably hot here, too. So it's summer. It's August. This is what we should expect. Enjoy it. Get a tan and get rest, because I think we're about to go into the meat grinder yet one more time. But this time it looks like the truth is on our side. I just hope the statute of limitations don't run out. So let's dive into it. I actually put a Substack article up recently, and I want to kind of highlight that because this article went and looked at your situation with respect to this missing catalyst of Russiagate, Joseph Mifsud, right? And there's a lot of questions because, is he the spy who wasn't there? Is he a figment of Mossad, or is Mossad really sort of the, should we say, the bullies of the British Crown, specifically MI6? Are they the beard for MI6? Because as we know, you were in London and you got derailed. So I kind of want to go into all of this with you if you have the time today to sort of unpack, refresh the public about what's going on, because Russiagate is coming around again. And this time I'm hoping that the DOJ is going to mean business and that the DNI is going to deliver the goods. And it's going to take, again, the testimony of people like you that are going to bring back the facts and the truth, as opposed to the fake Steele dossier, which we now know was a complete work of fiction. So can I start with you, George? Given that Obama publicly endorsed the CIA's conclusion of Russian meddling before the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, was finalized, what does this tell us about the narrative's authenticity and its origin?
Well, here's what I really think was going on. See, a lot of people don't realize that I actually was an advisor to Ben Carson's presidential campaign before I jumped on Trump's campaign. I had spent my entire career in D.C., rubbing elbows with basically people that were running the government in various administrations. So there was always this bizarre fake narrative that I was some sort of person that fell from the sky, randomly joined Trump's campaign, and then got in trouble. Nothing further from the truth than that. What I think we're going to discover as things progress, and I've said this on some various shows, and shortly after I said it, then you start having these revelations from Gabbard and others about files being declassified. I think Obama, with foreign governments, primarily Western governments, potentially Israel, and I've been on the record in the Washington Post talking about the potential Israeli involvement, colluded to basically spy on every single candidate that had a potential to take out Clinton and to prevent Obama's third term. So they were looking at different campaigns. Before I even joined the campaign, Ann, I had people like Mifsud, others running into me in London and Rome. This entire thing was already a fast-paced train wreck before Crossfire Hurricane. Now, the question is, are we finally going to get the info before Crossfire Hurricane, or are we just going to stick to the assessment that you laid claim to? In my opinion, Ann, if we just focus on the assessment, it's going to make Obama look shady, but you're not going to get a conspiracy charge. How you will get a conspiracy charge is if you show that there was a systematic effort, likely going into 2015, to target people, to defraud them of their civil liberties, and to illegally spy. And that's really what I think is at the heart of this entire probe.
Well, that's a big, tall order, because RICO is huge. And I interviewed somebody earlier this week that's looking at a massive RICO case, and he's been working on it for 15 years, that involves laundering cartel money in to the country through foreign banks, particularly in Canada, but also including investment houses like Goldman Sachs, and starting corporations that invest in mortgage fraud and then fund NGOs like Act Blue and so forth. And it's quite scandalous what he has the receipts on. But all of this stuff is linked together, and you can't get this stuff done without an intelligence community. Simona, you have you've been in the middle of this, and you've watched your husband go through the grinder. Do you believe that Joseph Mifsud was actually Mossad-linked operative working with CIA and MI6 to manufacture this pretext for Crossfire Hurricane? And if so, why do you think he was admitted from the Durham report? He was literally just not in there.
Well, and I think many people, first and foremost, misunderstood the reason why I was involved in the investigation. And it was not simply because I was out there defending George, but because I was the only person in the United States to know personally Joseph Mifsud and to have met him years before at European Parliament, where I used to work as legal advisor. And I worked for the London Centre of International Law Practice, where Joseph Mifsud was director 6 months prior George joined, not 6 months after George was working for them as well. So I was a witness precisely about Joseph Mifsud, and I was probably the first one to out his Western intelligence connections. I remember when I sat at the table of the FBI in Chicago over my first trip to visit George, I said to these people, Joseph Mifsud is definitely not someone linked to Russian intelligence. I have known him for years. I've witnessed him working toward campaigning for Hillary Clinton in Philadelphia during her infamous dinner in Philadelphia in 2016. And I also testified under oath all his connection to Western intelligence, including Italian intelligence. So I became very uncomfortable while thinking to genuinely cooperate with this investigation. And that's where they started to smear me as a Russian spy, not because I'm blonde, not because of everything people believe, but because I knew too many uncomfortable information about Mifsud. So to respond to your question, yes, I believe Joseph Mifsud is tied to Western intelligence. I think there was a collusion with the FBI at the time, and that's why we don't see his name in the Durham report. It was an asset of the FBI to entrap Donald Trump and to make sure all this fake narrative was triggered by this so-called fictitious information he delivered to George, but never made its way the way they wanted to make its way to build up a conspiracy theory. Now we know that the only conspiracy roots to them, roots to our institution, and I hope I will see, and I believe I will see Comey arrested, John Brennan arrested, and finally having even Italy responding about Joseph Mifsud.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think what you're trying to say, and I'm going to sort of contextualize this, is that, George, if you name Mifsud, right, if his name had been revealed to the intelligence community, to the public, to geopolitics, I think it would have been just one more nail in the coffin with respect to the corruption that this intelligence community apparatus, all of it around the world, people say it's 5 eyes, it's 6 eyes if you include Mossad and Israel, right? But it's also really more than that. It's like 12 eyes, because you've got to add all the other allied countries in. All of these intelligence communities work together, and they're weaponized against the people of their countries. So would that not have just been really an upender for, say, NATO, for instance, if everybody all of a sudden knew who Mifsud was to the FBI, to the CIA, and to Mossad, and to MI6?
Yeah, look, and this is why for years I kept telling people, stop focusing on the trees and not the forest. And what do I mean by that? Stop looking at Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. These were just two imbeciles that were fall people for the apparatus that went into this. So if we had exposed Joseph Mifsud as a Western intelligence operative that was doing the dirty work of basically NATO to take down an incipient populist candidate and ultimately administration, then that would upend the entire security architecture of the post-World War II, post-Cold War. The U.S. relationship with these countries would be altered. The U.S. citizenry would be very suspicious about how to deal with these foreign governments. For example, how many people know that the former Italian foreign minister introduced me to Mifsud? How many people know that I ran into this person at a school that David Ignatius at the Washington Post later on said trains the CIA? No one knows these facts, or if they do, barely know them, or they've been so lost in so many other fake things that people don't even understand the real story. Durham had the opportunity to present this to the American people, but what did he do, Ann? He punted when it mattered, and he punted when it came to Joseph Mifsud. Because Joseph Mifsud is not simply a one-man show. He epitomizes and represents the entire apparatus that went into attacking the populist nationalist candidacy of Trump and on all of the perpetrators that were involved in it. So we have to get to the bottom of who his handlers were. Did they come from the Mossad, MI6, Italian intelligence, the CIA, all combined? Durham punted, but Tulsi, I don't think, will punt, because the stakes are far too high. We've put far too much pressure on this person now people like Congressman Matt Gaetz, people like Congressman Thomas Massey, you, others are now highlighting that this person is critical to the conspiracy. And if you unfold that this person was being handled by the apparatus, the rest of the dominoes will then fall shortly thereafter. And that's why they've tried to cover this guy up for 10 years.
So, I mean, again, the apparatus is massive, but there's some key figures in this apparatus. You've got John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey. They were super loud voices circa 2016, 2017. If you watched, I remember having a heyday with John Brennan's Twitter feed. I used to love to just absolutely go off on the guy because he was just a moron. He's a radical communist, Islamist, and he hates America. He hates what the Republic stands for. Where are they now? And why have they gone so silent amid these new developments? Is it because it's just their silence is complicit with what Tulsi Gabbard's posting up? I'd like both of you two to hash this out.
Well, I believe they're trying to hiding strategy. They believe that all these headlines will result eventually into fluff because we've seen it happening with other scandal, unfortunately, until now. Until we will see accountability, these people will even feel the need to defend themselves. And that's the unfortunate reality behind so much talk and no action. I really think and I trust Tulsi Gabbard and all, and even Pam Bondi will follow through those important revelation about what our institution have been doing for so long. And we need response. Response in this case is accountability once for all, because you can't start fresh, brand new with a new administration without doing this swamp, without doing what people, Americans voted for this administration, expect this administration to do in first place, and then reestablish trust in the institution, which is very important.
And I think the reason that Brennan and these people have been so cocky all these years is because, like I said, they outsourced the scandal abroad, and they never felt that any investigators, let alone Congress or another administration, would start asking questions to foreign governments. They wanted the attention, like I said, on Lisa Page, on Peter Strzok, and maybe Jim Comey. But the reality of the situation is the following. Brennan was Obama's fall guy. Comey was Brennan's fall guy. So Obama was leading this, and he said to himself, there's no way that we can get away with a domestic surveillance or domestic counterintelligence investigation. So what we'll do is we'll outsource it. We'll make it seem like our allies were doing a good job. They stumbled upon some Trump advisors in London and Rome, in Jerusalem and Athens, whatever it was. And like the report said that came out about a year ago now, 26 Trump advisors were being bumped by CIA or CIA affiliated people. So they thought that they would never get away with it. But here's what happened, Ann. When I started testifying to Congress, when other people testified, explaining that all of this stuff was happening in Europe and the Middle East, how it originated, you had reports of John Durham and A.G. Barr going and traveling to Australia, the UK, Italy. After they traveled to Italy, that's when John Durham's probe became criminal. Now, the question is, after it became criminal, was he then stopped in his tracks by people like Garland, by people in the Biden administration? And that would be part of an obstruction charge, if that's what Durham is saying here. So that's something that we also need to understand, because if the investigation became criminal after they went to Italy and spoke to people about Mifsud, and these are facts, this has been widely reported, that's exactly how Durham's probe evolved from a review into a criminal probe. Why then was he afraid to mention the guy that launched his probe into a criminal matter? I'm telling you, I think he was obstructed. I don't think Durham was just there to waste time. He might have been, but I think it was more nefarious than that. I think the DOJ under Biden stopped him in his tracks, and that may be part and parcel why Patel and the people investigating them now call it an ongoing conspiracy. And that's why when you mention the statute of limitations, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay, good, because that is a concern of mine. We've got statute of limbs coming up with the 2020 election fraud. So, I mean, I've looked for loopholes anywhere, we'll take them. So as long as we've got, some extra wiggle room, I want to see this progress. someone who I respect, I call a friend, someone I deeply trust. And it's, there's very few people running around that have a very big public voice anymore that I trust, because we are living literally in an information civil war, an information revolution. It's literally an information war. And it's very hard to, find the signal through the noise. But somebody who is very good at that is General Flynn. And he has a lot of opinions about John Brennan. So I'd like to talk to you, and I want to get, again, both of you to answer this, but I'm going to start with George. General Flynn and you, George, have a knowledge base on Mifsud and all of this, and you're laying it out beautifully. But what do you think is the gap between what you think and what General Flynn actually knows? Because I believe General Flynn knows a lot more. Let's face it, that was the reason they went after him in the very beginning, and why Obama told Trump during inauguration, watch Flynn, don't hire Flynn. And Trump went ahead and hired Flynn. And then we all know what happened. He was set up, Pence lied, and the rest is history. And now he's sitting 2 blocks from the White House at the Gold Institute for International Studies, where he held an incredible international sort of a security seminar with, I think, 60 different ambassadors from around the world represented there, including myself. I was there. It was really a fascinating event to show the world you can govern, the people can do it. We don't need these, quote, heads of state and, White Houses, and we don't need a federal government. We were handling business ourselves that day. It was quite extraordinary. So what is this knowledge gap? What do you hypothesize that Flynn may have under his head, under his lid, I should say, that maybe Tulsi knows, and maybe there's something going on to make this a reality where we're going to get arrests?
Well, I can't speak for the general. The general is a patriot, and I consider him a friend. I think we have overlapping fates in many ways, considering we both went through similar targeting. He, of course, had a much different position than I did, given his years at the DIA and other positions that he held as a 3-star general. What's very interesting, and what I could say, is that General Flynn, was targeted initially by the British. This is something that I'm not sure he mentions a lot. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But he was initially targeted by Richard Dearlove, and I highly recommend your viewers to just Google who this person was. He was the former director of the MI6.
Right.
He lured him to London to then meet him at this symposium. And Dearlove, with other operatives like Stefan Halper, who tried to set me up, was basically saying that a Russian woman called Svetlana Lokova was a honeypot that was entrapping Flynn, and that Flynn was a corrupt person. This all originated from British intelligence. This wasn't a CIA-led effort. And the reason I believe that they went after him is because he knew a lot of the information about how these intelligence partners share intelligence, or how they basically spy on each other's citizenry on the behest of their presidents or prime ministers. So I think what is eventually going to come out is that the investigation started in 2015 with British intelligence, and that Flynn was primarily the first target, or one of the first targets to be targeted for extermination. And I think perhaps General Flynn has talked about this. Maybe he hasn't. I'll let him speak for himself. But I think he knows that the scandal is international. And that's why I think he's as confident as I am that once the direction and once the vision left the United States and went abroad, then the investigators were able to ramp up the pace. And that's why I think the grand jury was impaneled. I think that's why DNI Gabbard calls this a seditious conspiracy, a treasonous act. Usually a seditious conspiracy, a treasonous act, has to involve a foreign government or a foreign power of some nature, or working on behest of a foreign government. These are, of course, my theories, but I haven't been proven wrong on many things. I think I'll be proven right here.
Well, I had, first and foremost, I agree with you about General Flynn is incredibly knowledgeable, even when considered his position at the time it was targeted. I had the privilege to interview General Flynn along with all the targets of the deep states for this series airing on Tucker Carlson Network, called All the President's Men, where I start interviewing, not personally, Sean Stone is the director, George, with the other people. I'm one of the lead interviewer. And General Flynn, actually in this episode, I invite people to watch in a long interview of 2 hours. He explains one basic principle that helps people to understand what was really going on there. Not only the involvement of foreign countries, but also the impact of the psychological warfare and disinfo operation. And this is something that was at the time used for military, as a military technique to target and fight terrorists, but has been applied to American citizens with a vulneration of your basic constitutional rights. This is something that explains egregiously, and I really invite people to watch this episode and all the series to understand from General Flynn knowledge, not only of what happened at the time, but also of some military techniques that have been deployed to American citizens.
So if we have our way, General Flynn hopefully will be back in the administration. That's what I want. But at this point in time, I think that General Flynn is probably very effective, even more so on the outside, for the reasons we're talking about, that, you know, Kash and Dan Bongino are calling this an ongoing investigation. I sat in Ed Martin's office a week and a half ago, and we're learning just about how great the people are on top, but how bad the rot is beneath. They don't have strong scaffolding. They have swamp and quicksand underneath them. So if they're trying to get investigations going, they're literally having to build things on the fly, because the hundreds of thousands of people that work below them are useless. I mean, absolutely and utterly useless. In fact, they're working against them. It would be better if they fired everybody and had nobody, and started contracting with teams of people, real patriots that have done the work and have done the effort and have put together the evidence to go ahead and move forward, so that we could expedite these ground juries even more quickly with real evidence. And again, this is part of we the people. This is our job and our responsibility. We have a special question from Ivan Rakeland, and he wants to talk. He asked me to ask you about Azra Turk, the so-called Turkish researcher who approached George Papadopoulos under some false academic pretenses. And Ivan is asking this. He says, George, can you provide as much detail as possible on Azra's physical description, age, height, weight, build, complexion, gait, eye color, hair color, any distinguishing characteristics? And further, have you been able to confirm or reasonably suspect whether she was affiliated with CIA, London Station MI6 on Brennan's request, or one of the other 51 signatories or Crossfire Hurricane operatives? So basically, he's saying, in short, who was she really working for, and was she tasked to frame you?
Yeah, well, Ivan, hi. I know Ivan's a great guy, and I know he's been covering the weaponization for a very long time. So, look, this is a person that's as mysterious, if not more mysterious than even Mifsud. And let me just kind of preface what I'm saying. When Mifsud's name went public, at least he gave an interview to the Italian media where he said, I don't know what's going on. I'm a Clinton supporter. So the last vanishing act of Joseph Mifsud on planet Earth before he went underground was, I'm a Clinton supporter. I love Clinton. So then he disappeared off the face of the planet. So you could understand why he probably fell off the face of the planet, or why he's being hidden. Now, Azra Turk, on the other hand, has never been heard from. In fact, let's go by facts now before I get into the description and how I met this person. The New York Times called her a non-FBI personnel, part of a different government agency. This is directly from the New York Times. So she wasn't FBI. So let's just forget that she was FBI. She was part of an operation in London. Now we're going back to London again. In September of 2016 with Stefan Halper, where Stefan Halper and the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs invited me to London to go write a research paper on my expertise in energy and what I knew in Cyprus, in Greece, in Israel, Egypt, and everything I was advising on in terms of that. And Azra Turk met with me the day before I met Halper as some sort of assistant of Halper. Now, she was either Turkish or Azeri, meaning from Azerbaijan. She had a very, which they're basically the same people. They're a very heavy accent, a dual citizen, of the United States and one of these countries. Azra Turk in Turkish actually means pure Turk. So that was clearly like some sort of fake, weird name. My research was very hostile to Turkey, especially back then, and what I was advising Trump on for many reasons. I covered in the book for people that are actually interested in that research aspect. And she was a fake blonde, brown eyes, light skin, normal skin, whatever, and lived in Los Angeles, apparently. So the last person who I think had her number was Chuck Ross of the Daily Caller. I remember I gave Chuck Ross her number when I said that there was some strange people he called, and then the phone went disconnected and no one ever was able to hear from this person again. So if she was an FBI and she was a foreign asset luring me to London with the British and then lives in Los Angeles, I don't know what agency she could possibly work for if it's not the FBI, unless she's running some sort of black ops or is part of a black op that the U.S. government or other governments conduct with. So that's the best I can say about what I remember of, but no one has heard from this person in 10 years. I don't know if Simona,
I don't know her. I didn't know you at the time, so I can say less about the.
I know nothing.
I know. I mean, honestly, I think it's actually people focus on these sensational details while the picture is much bigger, and it involves real spies like Joseph Mifsud that I think are the real people should question about.
But here's the last thing I'll say about this Anne and Tyven. What's even more disturbing than Stefan Halper and this person is that during the same exact moment that I had an op run against me in London, I was meeting with the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs with their representatives, including the number 2 to Boris Johnson, Tobias Ellwood. Now, Google who this person is. I think he's a current member of parliament. When I was meeting with him in London, he was the number 2 to Boris Johnson. He later, I think, became Deputy Minister of Defense, very high-profile person. All of this happened within 3 days. So that's him, this guy right here. He then met with me in New York. Just understand what I'm saying here. So some people might say, oh, it was just like a random FBI operation. No, it wasn't. Azra Turk was not FBI. The FBI doesn't conduct operations with Americans in London. If they're going to run an op against me, they'll do it in Washington, New York, Chicago, anywhere on the continental United States. You're not going to drag me out there, pay me money, and have all of this action happen unless it was part of something much bigger than the FBI.
I would agree with you on that. And again, from where I'm sitting, to the both of you, this has been a British intelligence operation. They're still, I'm going to make it very simple, water it down. They're still pissed about 1776. They're still pissed about the fact that they still have people in this country that want to be free. And we are the Alamo to the world, and they've got to take down and completely control the United States. And the fact that we still have our Second Amendment alive and well, despite the onslaught of litigation all over this country to try and take our guns, is really the only thing that's protecting us, because our free speech has been completely taken away. There's lawsuits out there. Supreme Court punted on a really good one the other day. It was shocking. They're totally captured. The courts are completely captured. So all we have is our Second Amendment, and that terrifies them. And I think if the American people were to rally and start surrounding, every state capital, demanding that we cut the crap, essentially, it would scare them. And perhaps maybe the big mirror, the truth mirror on these people is going to finally catch up, and the American people are going to see them for who they are. But this intelligence community around the world has been financed by these international bankers for a long time. And it goes, these fake weapons of mass destruction wars, like, Iran has a nuclear bomb every 15 minutes, right? It's a bunch of BS. It's all about trade routes. It's about natural resources. Yep. And that's what it's always been from the beginning of time. That's why CCP has got the Belt and Road Initiative, Silk Road 2.0. This is why BRICS exists, because they realize they have a lot of those natural resources. They can trade with each other. They're just being more civil. They're using sound money in a basket of currencies, that their own natural resources and gold to settle trade imbalances. I mean, this is your language, George. They understand what time it is. And we're still living in this colonial empire over here, being, bitch slapped by the crown, by the British intelligence community, by the central bankers out of the city of London. Somebody who I know that studies the city of London a lot and talks about the Pilgrim Society is a gentleman, Michael McKibben. He's a deep researcher. He highlighted two pivotal key UK figures who were completely omitted as well from the Durham report. The first one is Arvinder K. Sambai. I'm going to pull this up. This is his report right here. And it was listed in she was listed in official records as the chief prosecutor with the British Crown Prosecution Service and reportedly a longtime associate of, ready for it, drumroll, Robert Mueller, going back to 9/11 counterterrorism operations. And she, based on documented communications, Arvinder appears to have acted as a transatlantic legal intel go-between. So my question for you both is, do you believe that Arvinder Sambai acted as a bridge between the UK legal authorities and the US intelligence community to help fabricate this predicate for Crossfire Hurricane? And if so, why do you think Durham refused to mention her despite ample evidence of her involvement?
And this is why I love doing shows like yours with very well-researched people on this topic, because you're getting to the core now and away from the Mickey Mouse stuff. This person that your viewers are looking at on their screen right now was the one who actually created the meeting between myself, Vincenzo Scotti, who was the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, so the equivalent of Marco Rubio in Italy, to Mifsud. This person that you're looking at on your screen was a director of the London Center for International Law Practice, which had hired me out of the blue to come work for them without me understanding exactly why. And later you find out, and Simona has her own stories there because she had been hired there, that they were all very connected to people like Mueller and others. And this group, the London Center of International Law Practice, for some reason has escaped scrutiny. In the docuseries that Simona and I worked on, that she was a lead interviewer on, All the President's Men, we talk about it a bit. But this group is really the genesis of how the entire cascading effect happened, leading to Mifsud, leading to Downer, leading to the British, leading to London, all of these things. It all starts from here. And this woman was the director of it. And Simona has her stories about what was really going on there too.
Yeah, well, I worked there for 3 months, not more than 3 months, and I walked away because every activity there seemed to be very shady. They were hiring people more or less with similar backgrounds and internationally. I was actually legal advisor to the presidency office of European Parliament. And of course, for my young age, I was a very valuable asset for people that seemed to be more interested in what was happening in the biggest, in the power rooms, in my case, European Parliament, and other people working for offices in different ministries of different countries. So obviously the crowd was selected with a certain, criteria. And the presence of this FBI individual at the same time where George was connected to Professor Mifsud, which was everything but a professor in my view. Yes, he was directing also the London Academy of Diplomacy, where he had students, but his activity seemed to be obviously and clearly oriented to diplomatic relations. He had access to the power rooms, both at European Parliament and in Italy, as far as I witnessed as in first person. So everything about this organization screamed espionage or potentially training people for espionage. So I really think that all the roads lead to London and Rome. Yep. Not only Rome, but also London. And there are so many.
London and the Vatican. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And there was not a good. I always say there is a God plan in everything. How many chances that someone like me met somebody like George at the time after he already had his first interview with the FBI? So not really from the beginning, but just when facts already unfolded, and happened to be the same person who knew Mifsud, who could testify to American authorities about this individual, for then realizing that nobody was really interested in knowing what I knew, because obviously I already knew, but they were trying to use actually this individual for conspiracy. And now almost 10 years later, we're still talking about him. We still don't know where he is. And I think this is very telling itself.
Anne, I'm just going to mention one more thing. So this group actually, from what I did when I did some research, actually had hosted one of Mueller's own prosecutors not too long ago.
Really?
They had a symposium,
Wow.
and they hosted one of the prosecutors of Mueller. So it was almost as if they were just mocking the people, saying that we were all in on it from the beginning.
Yep.
Now, the question really is, are we going to focus on Mickey Mouse stuff, or are we going to get to the meat and to the heart of the matter? And I think that the people in charge right now can't get away with just going after slapping people on the wrists, going after lying charges or nonsensical things like that. They have to go to the heart of the matter. And as long as we keep up the pressure the way that you are and we have in General Flynn and Ivan and millions of patriots, I think that we're going to see some real results.
Well, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and I'm hoping you're down with this next question because, again, in talking with my good friend Michael McKibben, the name Alison Saunders mean anything to you? Alison Saunders, the former chief of the UK Crown Prosecution Service, who had a private dinner with Bruce and Nellie Orr just days before the Steele dossier surfaced. I mean, honestly, given the timing and the sensitive cross-border comms that were taking place then, do you actually believe that Saunders played an active role in coordinating or blessing British cooperation with the DOJ, FBI, CIA's internal political targeting? Did Durham deliberately ignore these figures to protect the 5 or 6 eyes or 12 eyes structure at this point?
This is unfortunately what Durham knew, but he had to punt on because it's the biggest scandal in history. And it's the biggest scandal in history because if it's exposed, it will upend the United States relationship with dozens of countries, how we share our security, our intelligence, potentially the future of NATO, how the United States views NATO and these countries. It would be earth-shattering. So what happened during Durham's testimony? You had many congressmen and congresswomen go out there and basically say, FBI bad, you did a good job. They didn't cover any of this stuff. The only person that did any digging into even 10% of what we're discussing here today, which is MIFSUD, let's say 50% of what we're discussing here being MIFSUD, was Congressman Matt Gaetz. And look what they did to Congressman Matt Gaetz afterwards. They completely tried to annihilate him, but he fought back. The people that seek the truth are the ones who are targeted. You know what they say, if you're not indicted, you're not to be trusted. It's really not a joke. I trust the people who have been targeted, and I don't trust the ones that are walking around there smiling and doing interviews and not doing anything.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, again, look at General Flynn.
Yeah, exactly.
I was put on the domestic terror quiet skies list. In fact, I'm talking about what my next move is there, because that was 2 years of nonsense that cost me a lot of time and money, missing planes and being removed from airports and humiliated, failing bomb tests and being literally patted down by a bunch of, alphabet mafia creeps that were having their way with me because they could, and sending me, love notes and threats along the way. And, never telling me why I was put on this list, except just saying I don't meet the threshold for a low enough security risk to warrant TSA pre-check anymore. And the amount of travel I did, it was like I was on a plane 6 days a week. It was ridiculous. So, this is what we're dealing with. And, unfortunately, if we don't get a handle on this, we're going to go right back to this. All the people that have been targeted will be thrown in the clink the next time. They're not going to let us get away with it so we can sit here and pontificate on podcasts anymore and expose us and put their faces up and go deep and wax poetically on these people. They're going to say, no, this time, just like the J6ers, we're going to lock you up and you're not going to be able to say boo. We're suspending habeas corpus. There'll be no due process and you'll never be seen from again. And oh, by the way, we're building these great FEMA camps, illegal alien camps, Alligator Alcatraz, right? I think those will be used for us. Why take down a perfectly good structure when you can throw, a bunch of dissenters in there?
The only way that they will go after these people, including what happened on January 6th, this issue we're talking about here, is if the people are knowledgeable of the facts and pick up the phone, call their members of Congress, demand accountability, demand hearings, pick up the phone and contact the DOJ and say, have you looked at XYZ? Because if it's just a couple people and no one else cares, trust me, the DOJ doesn't want to investigate this stuff. People like Bongino, he's a nice guy. He doesn't want to put his reputation on the line to expose this type of stuff because it can backfire on him down the line. Maybe Patel thinks the same way. This is dangerous stuff that we're talking about. But I think with enough pressure, with enough people continuing to talk about this stuff, down the line, Patel and Bongino and others will understand that this is a matter of national importance. You can't punt the way that Durham did, and that your legacy will be written based on what you or what you don't do. And that's why you can't get away with stuff you did in 2016 or 17. The people are far too knowledgeable, far too educated on these topics now. And I love Patel. I love Bongino. Patel was part of the docuseries. Bongino, had my back going back almost 10 years. I just want them to go all the way. And I say that as somebody that respects them. And I think we're all in it together. And I think we all agree on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I can add something at this respect, when I interviewed Kash Patel, you couldn't have anyone more knowledgeable about dynamics of Russiagate as head of the FBI. Yeah. And don't forget that back on time, almost 10 years ago, Don Bongino created a slogan that became pretty famous, is Papa D is the key, which is basically synonymous of how central was his role in unfolding as first target, but also the domino effect that we saw after George targeting. So that there are no better people than them together to really make this happen. And I totally trust they will.
I do too.
Is MAGA being too hard on Pam, Dan, and Kash at this point?
Look, and it's like what I just said. We just have high expectations. And with family or with friends, you can be direct. With people you don't know, you kind of, go in circles. We have high expectations. MAGA is a movement by the people, for the people, and draining the swamp is one of the 3 pillars of it. 3. There's 3 pillars: foreign policy, economic policy, and draining the swamp. These are the issues that people care most about. In many ways, I would even argue draining the swamp could be number 2, maybe even number 1, based on the reaction of the Epstein stuff that just happened, based on how people are remembering Obamagate from 10 years ago, and it's once again the number 1 story around the world. This is serious stuff. I don't think people are being hard on them. They just have high expectations, and they want them to deliver, which I believe they will.
Well, when it comes to Epstein, of course, so when you announce a client list and you make a media tour to announce this client list, of course, you generate an expectation. Because I always say this, MAGA is not simply a political movement. It's a political movement that stands for the coming back to morality. We expect from these people to take down corruption, and that's what the beauty of MAGA is in my eyes. So I agree with George, expectations are high because we trust these people. I would say I was disappointed on the Epstein side as well, but I think I won't be disappointed on the Russiagate side because I know how knowledgeable and what fighters we are talking about. And also, let's give them time. Let's give them time to do the job. It's not easy to attack a machine that has been like a pyramid. We just see the point of the iceberg, but underneath there is so much dirt to scratch away. So let's give them time and trust.
What's next for you both? What are your next moves? Is there any indication that you're going to be having to cooperate any further with investigators, or are you stepping back? You have an incredible book out. I remember interviewing you. The first interview I did with you, George, was this book, Deep State Target. And it's a fantastic read. I encourage everybody to pick up a copy, but what's next? Are you going to update the book based on what transpires and what you learn and what you can say? Because maybe you can't say everything you wanted to in this first book. You had to wait for things to move along. Give us a little sneak preview.
Yeah, I mean, we've been extremely busy on a lot of political documentaries over the last 3 years. From Ukraine, Simone has been working on all these incredible documentaries from Ukraine to Russiagate, the weaponization of government. So we've been very proud of how all of that turned out. Obviously, the book, and I would love to write a follow-up to the book. I mean, there's been writing it, but we need a conclusion to have a follow-up. I don't want to leave people with a cliffhanger like a lot of people do. I want people to read a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I think we are finally going to have the end. And if I'm asked to testify again, I've testified under oath to Congress before, if I'm asked to testify based on new revelations or information that was withheld from investigators, more than happy to go in, do my patriotic duty, testify behind closed doors, publicly, whatever it is, get the truth out, make them be held accountable. Let's heal this country and let's keep this country great.
I love that. Lastly, because I have to ask, with Joseph Misfit, with the mysterious 2018 Zurich sighting, and there was some strange things going on, and we were all wondering, is he here? Is he there? We know Mueller went to Rome, etc. His Rome connection. There was not Mueller, Barr. Sorry, what am I saying? Mueller, Barr. I'm having a Mueller mental episode right now. Barr went to Rome. The Barr's cryptic sort of secret tape that he had in 2019. And then it went like nothing, like we've heard zero, zilch. What do you think are the most plausible theories about where he's being held, or he's hiding, or he's shielded?
Well, last time he has been spotted in Umbria, which is a region here in Italy. He was living at the expenses of the Link campus, which remembers the same university that trains a CIA official and Secret Service agents. I think it's plausible to believe he's still here in Italy when we are at now. And I don't think anyone can be, some people raise the question, is he still alive? Is he dead? Nobody can be dead without a death certificate. So I think many investigative journalists, including myself, try to go back to the whereabouts of Mifsud, also because I personally used to know many people that in common with Mifsud, but every and each of them vanished from my side. So obviously it's a way to dismiss or a way to distance himself or something that became so controversial. But I still believe he's in Italy. And yes, so to go back to your first question, I'll be happy to give my contribution to the new investigation. And I hope that the new subpoenas at the new grand jury will be as aggressive as the one I experienced on my skin in the first round from the demon-corrupted Democrat machine.
Is it Matt Gaetz? Do you think it's Matt Gaetz?
Matt Gaetz, I think I would have done an incredible attorney general. I mean, I've been wishing him to be. I like Pam Bondi, but I think nobody could have done a better job than Matt Gaetz. That's my personal opinion.
You know, Ann, I'll just say one last thing about Mifsud. Just about 10 days ago, Vincenzo Scotti, the former minister of the Italian's Foreign Affairs, who introduced me to him, was arrested and was sentenced to 5 years in prison over some sort of corruption charge. Now, this is very interesting because, and Simona knows the legal system here in Italy much better than I do, it's very rare to sentence a 93-year-old man to 5 years in prison over basically a very basic charge. I think that this was all based on the time now that stuff about Mifsud is going to come out. And I think Giorgia Meloni, who's the prime minister in Italy and is a good friend of Trump, eventually will play a major role in exposing what he did.
Good.
I hope so.
It's sounding like an episode out of the Italian Connection.
Right? It's a new Soprano.
You know, I said the other day on a live, I said, I trust the mafia over our own federal government at this point.
Absolutely. Me too.
You know, they love family. They protect their friends. They'll put a cap in your ass, as I said the other day, if you're not good. Here, nothing ever happens. Nobody ever gets in trouble. It's only the good people that get locked up because we are speaking out and being dissenters. And we have a constitutional right to do so, which is just shows we have a foreign corporation. The District of Corruption has usurped our constitutional country. And I think the people just don't fully understand that yet, but they're waking up to it. And it's going to be because people like you both stood by and you stood in the fire and you took literally oncoming Hail Mary bullets and fire and slings and arrows, went to prison, got out and wrote a book. And here you are still here, as I like to say.
And who would have known, Ann, maybe in a different life, I would have been a boring lawyer, but maybe this was more interesting. So.
No, I think it was definitely more interesting. God doesn't make mistakes.
I tease her because she's a lawyer. No, but jokes aside, Ann, I wouldn't change a thing in the world. And people, they ask me that. I just wouldn't. I think this was God's plan, and I think the best is yet to come. So I'm very excited for everything.
The best is yet to come. I think we will see something very, very flashy soon in the face of everybody.
Absolutely.
I agree. Well, it has been a pleasure to have you both on. George and Simona Papadopoulos, you two are fantastic. Best place for folks to follow you. I know we've got your X account here. I'll pull up Simona's in just a minute, but that's George Papadopoulos. If you go to his account, it's George Papa 19, George Papa 19. And, Simona, you have a lot going on besides, just being a beautiful woman and a lawyer. You've got a business going on. You want to share with us what's going on in your world in addition to just, watching all of this unfold?
Yes, thank you so much. So we have we started a podcast, Global View, which is here, and we had a bunch of very interesting guests, and we hope to have you soon as well.
I'd love to. I'm going to follow you right now.
Thank you so much. And I also have a little business, which is my fashion line, Agape by Simona. You can find it on Instagram. And I'm very much involved with political documentaries in the last 3 years. So I really became committed into exposing the truths. I've been through the fire with George, so I thought to keep on going, speaking the truth, and until, finally people will listen.
Wonderful. Well, I can see it is probably 7 or 8 o'clock there right now. It's getting dark and it's probably moving into your dinner time. And I know you're visiting family, so I don't want to keep you any longer. I really appreciate you all coming on today. We're going to continue to keep this story alive. We're going to talk about it more because this is the missing link. And George Papadopoulos and Simona Papadopoulos, you have been through the fire and you didn't give up on America. You didn't give up on what this administration is trying to accomplish. And you've had some pretty incredible allies along the way. It doesn't get much better than General Flynn and Roger Stone and many others. So you're very blessed. So
absolutely.
I would be one. I'll be your ally.
Thank you.
And you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
It was a real pleasure, and thanks so much. And God bless America. The best is yet to come. And let's pray for people like Bongino, Patel, Gabbard, Bondi, President Trump. They have a lot of hard work ahead, and God has to be with them. So God bless America, and thank you again, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Wow, what an incredible couple. I mean, really, when you think about the Grace Under Fire, everything they went through and the mainstream media onslaught in the very beginning, we did not understand when every single Mockingbird media was talking about George Papadopoulos and Carter Page and General Flynn and how they were absolutely, part of the whole Russia collusion, delusion narrative. And, of course, President Trump was Putin's puppet and all this nonsense. I mean, just utter nonsense. And to understand fully now that everything that they were putting out there has been debunked as a lie. How anybody could ever turn on Rachel Madcow again, except just to throw darts at the TV and laugh at her? She's a loon, an absolute loon. And look at the mainstream media, Howard Stern, his show's getting canceled. They're canceling these mainstream morons all over the place. And they should, because their numbers have tanked because you guys woke up and started paying attention to other people online. So I appreciate the support you've given me over the years. It has been an honor to serve in that capacity. I want to serve you some more. I want to show you a couple of things that I think you need to know. And if not, you can clip these pieces from this live and send it to your friends. But I exited this system because I see it as corruption. The United States is a corrupt entity. The federal corporation, 28 USC 300215A, is a corrupt entity, and it's been weaponized. All of its agencies have been weaponized against you, the American people. The first and foremost one that we all know is the Federal Reserve. I'm going to play a very quick video here because I want you to understand who it is. It's only 2 minutes, and I'm going to show you how you can exit this system.
Jekyll Island, November 1910. 7 bankers meeting in secret to create America's central bank. We just can't call it that.
The 1907 panic nearly destroyed us. Banks failed, fortunes vanished.
We want to control America's money supply, create booms, trigger busts, and profit from both. And how will we do that?
We'll create money from nothing, loan it to the government, and charge interest. Legal counterfeiting, my friends.
But there's a cost. Every dollar we print steals value from existing dollars. It's a hidden tax that flows directly to us.
And it gets worse. If we ever get off the gold standard, governments can print money for wars. Endless wars become possible and profitable.
Since Americans hate central banks, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. Sounds governmental, doesn't it? It's not.
The president will appoint board members, but we'll pick who he appoints. We'll have 12 regional banks. Looks decentralized, democratic even, but New York banks control them all. That's us.
You're probably wondering how we're going to get this through Congress.
December 23rd, 1913. Most of Congress home for Christmas. Perfect timing for passing unpopular legislation. I'll publicly oppose our own bill in Congress. They'll pass it thinking they beat Wall Street. We'll fund university chairs, write the textbooks. They'll teach our system as economic science. Beautiful. Every American born after this will inherit debt on money we created from nothing. Generational servitude. The Federal Reserve. Not federal, no reserves. But everyone will think it's their government protecting them.
Good afternoon.
Federal Reserve, nothing federal. There is no reserve. And if you're paying attention to the price of gold, you know that it's going up. There's a lot of chaos out there in the market. I've got another video I want to share with you on how to exit the system, but I also want to give you an opportunity to invest in gold. If you have IRAs or 401ks and want to convert your stocks and equity, cash, whatever it is you have in those accounts into gold, which is clearly on the rise. It was somewhere around 3,400 today. The gold bugs are pushing 4,700 by the year end. So you still have opportunity to make money on the way up. Here's who I trust, Augusta Precious Metals. This election is filled with promises of tax cuts that will go nowhere. But don't let this excess noise blind you to what's really at stake, your retirement. As economic volatility continues to grow, few are talking about the consequence that could ripple through your retirement savings. Many wealthy investors have started preparing for the shockwave ahead. Have you? If you have $50,000 or more saved for retirement, click the link below or call 1-888-782-9064 and secure your free guide to gold IRAs from Augusta Precious Metals. Again, click the link below or call 1-888-782-9064. And lastly, I told you I'm going to lead you on how to exit this corrupt system if you so choose. There's a group of folks that have done an incredible job, put together a website called nationalstatus.info, nationalstatus.info. Here is a very short almost 3-minute video, but it walks you through the process and gives you the website address where you too can learn how to exit this corrupt system and do it legally and lawfully, so that you are no longer a party to the corporate U.S. jurisdiction.
A national is clearly defined in the statutes at large, the United States Code, and the Code of Federal Regulations, and can be defined as an individual who is largely concerned only with domestic matters in his state and is lawfully and legally separate from the federal government. A U.S. citizen is under the direct jurisdiction of the federal government for protection against the state where they reside, making them an enemy of their state. When you were born on American soil, you were born a national. But through legal presumption, you are assumed to be a U.S. citizen, which is completely and personally subject to the federal government. This control is feudal in nature. As a U.S. citizen, you are property of the federal government. As property, your labor is collateralized, bonded, and traded. However, the nature of your servitude is voluntary. It has to be, because our 13th Amendment forbids involuntary servitude. It's voluntary, however, only because you didn't know that you had another choice. The goal of National Status Info is to make you aware of this choice and show you how to volunteer out if that is your decision. Volunteering out removes you from any regulations that are federal in nature. It puts your body and assets back under your ownership and gives you the lawful foundation to defend your rights, both against your state and especially the federal government. Being a national is simply declaring to the federal government that you don't need their protection against your state. It means you regain your access to common law, and it means you are reclaiming ownership of yourself, your property, and your labor. National Status Info is here to inform you of a choice you never knew you had. So, if you are comfortable in your servitude, you may choose now to do nothing with the information, and for the first time in your life, your voluntary servitude will truly be voluntary because you now know you have a choice. But if your heart beats with a need for freedom to walk firmly and bravely out of your enslavement, we can tell you how. The process is not hard, and your only cost is postage. What is hard, though, is undoing the knots in your mind and taking it back by learning what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. So don't just take our word for it. Look at the data yourself, challenge it, challenge us, and draw your own conclusions.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. Have a great weekend. I appreciate you tuning in as always. We'll see you again next week for more Steel News. I'm Ann Vandersteel. God bless you. God bless America. And I'll see you again next week. Bye.